The bank manager thought no one would stop him. Right there in the middle of a Texas branch, he poured hot coffee onto the face of a 72-year-old black man and told him that people like him only existed to slow down the country. Everyone looked, but nobody had the courage to step in. Nobody, until she arrived. A woman the FBI could never arrest, Wall Street could never buy, and the mob bosses called La Regina, the Queen, beautiful, elegant, ruthless. And by a twist of fate, she owed a life debt to that very humiliated elderly man. 40 minutes later, the entire bank was surrounded. The manager was on his knees begging for forgiveness, and all of Internet America was witnessing the fastest public downfall in history. And you? Would you have had the courage to confront the manager, or would you have waited for the Queen to arrive? The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Lone Star National Bank in Dallas, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor where a handful of customers waited in the quiet lobby. Brad Coleman stood behind the manager's desk with his arms crossed, his jaw tightening the moment he saw the elderly black man pushing through the glass doors. Arnaldo Johnson moved slowly, each step deliberate, his weathered hands gripping a folded bank statement as if it held the weight of his entire life. 72 years old, a survivor of 2 decades of subtle racism and countless indignities, Arnaldo had come only to withdraw his delayed pension, nothing more. Brad leaned toward the teller beside him and muttered loud enough for the waiting customers to hear that the line was about to move at a crawl now. The words hung in the air like smoke, drawing uncomfortable glances from those nearby, but no one spoke up. Arnaldo heard the comment but kept his eyes forward, refusing to give the man the satisfaction of a reaction. His trembling fingers smoothed the creased paper as he approached the counter, his voice steady when he asked if another staff member might assist him instead. Brad's expression shifted from smug amusement to open hostility. He stepped out from behind the protective barrier of the counter, his polished shoes clicking against the floor, and picked up a white ceramic mug filled with steaming coffee from the desk beside him. The scent of the dark roast filled the space between them as Brad raised the cup, his lips curling into a sneer. He asked if Arnaldo wanted priority service, his tone dripping with mockery, and before anyone could process what was happening, he tilted the mug and poured the scalding liquid directly onto Arnaldo's face. Gasps erupted around the lobby. Several customers lifted their phones instinctively, capturing the moment, but not one person moved to intervene. Arnaldo staggered backward, his hands flying to his burning skin as coffee dripped from his chin onto his shirt. He did not scream, did not curse, did not collapse. He simply stood there, breathing through the pain, his dignity fighting a battle against humiliation in front of a room full of witnesses. Brad set the empty mug down with a casual thud and laughed, telling the old man that next time he should know his place. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning and the soft sobbing of a woman near the back. Then came the voice. It was smooth, controlled, feminine, and carried the unmistakable edge of an Italian accent that could cut through steel. The woman said that Arnaldo's place was not on the floor, but perhaps Brad's was. The glass door opened again, but this time the sound carried a different weight, as if the air itself recognized the shift in power before anyone else did. Bianca Moretti entered with the kind of presence that made people forget they were breathing. 45 years old, she moved like royalty through hostile territory. Her dark hair swept back, her tailored coat perfectly fitted, her heels striking the floor with a rhythm that commanded silence. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, locked immediately onto Arnaldo, and the entire room watched as she crossed the distance between them without acknowledging anyone else. She knelt beside him, her gloved hand reaching gently to touch his burned face, her voice soft when she told him she had promised to come help with the withdrawal. Arnaldo looked at her through watering eyes, his mouth opening to respond, but the words caught in his throat. Brad let out a mocking laugh from behind the counter, saying of course the old man had brought luxury back up. Bianca did not turn, did not react, her focus entirely on Arnaldo as she asked if he was all right, reminding him that she had promised to take care of him. Her tone carried the warmth of someone who genuinely cared, and for a moment the tension in the room softened. Only then did she rise to her full height and turn slowly to face Brad. She asked him if he understood what he had just done, if he knew who he had just crossed. Brad puffed out his chest and declared that he was the manager here, demanding to know who she thought she was. Bianca smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes, and told him calmly that she was someone he never wanted to meet. Outside, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the curb in perfect synchronization, their tinted windows reflecting the Texas sun. Men and women in sharp business attire stepped out, each holding not weapons but smartphones, their movements coordinated and purposeful. They entered the bank in silence, fanning out across the lobby, positioning themselves at strategic angles. Within seconds, every corner of the bank was being recorded from multiple perspectives, the cameras capturing Brad's face as it drained of color, capturing the shocked expressions of the customers, capturing Arnaldo still standing with coffee stains on his shirt. Bianca did not raise her voice, did not make grand gestures. She simply looked at Brad and said his full name, Brad Coleman, followed by 3 words that echoed through the marble hall like a judge's final verdict. Your day is over. The phones in the room began to buzz, notifications pinging as the footage started uploading in real time, and Brad realized with dawning horror that he was no longer in control of anything, not the bank, not the situation, not even his own fate. One of Bianca's assistants, a young woman with wire-rimmed glasses and an expression of quiet determination, approached Brad with a tablet held out like evidence in a courtroom. The screen glowed with files, documents, screenshots of internal emails, complaint forms that had been filed and mysteriously buried. She tilted the device so everyone nearby could see the endless list of infractions, accusations of harassment against employees, reports of verbal abuse that had been ignored by upper management, patterns of behavior that painted a picture Brad had spent years trying to hide. Bianca stepped closer, her voice cutting through the stunned silence as she told him that he had humiliated many people within these walls. But this time, he had chosen the wrong man to destroy. Brad's face shifted from arrogant defiance to pale confusion, his hands reaching out defensively as he stammered that this was private information, that what they were doing was illegal. Bianca tilted her head slightly, her expression almost pitying, and replied that the real crime was burning the face of an elderly man, that the real crime was abusing the power he had been trusted with. She gestured toward the phone still recording, the small red lights blinking like accusatory eyes, and informed him that everything was streaming live across TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Within minutes, the viewer count climbed past 200,000, comments flooding in faster than anyone could read them. The hashtag appeared organically, spreading like wildfire across the internet. Justice for Arnaldo, trending in Dallas, then Texas, then nationwide. Brad's phone began vibrating violently in his pocket, the ringtone piercing through the lobby as call after call came through. He pulled it out with shaking hands, seeing names flash across the screen. The bank's regional director, his wife, his lawyer, the corporate office, all demanding answers he did not have. Around him, customers who had remained silent began stepping forward, their voices overlapping as they shared their own stories. A middle-aged woman in a floral dress pointed at Brad and said he had humiliated her too when she came in to ask about a loan modification. A young man in a hoodie added that Brad had screamed at him for being unemployed, mocking him in front of everyone. More voices joined, a chorus of buried grievances finally finding the courage to speak. Bianca did not interrupt, did not push. She simply stood there and let the truth pour out. Then she raised one hand, a single elegant gesture, and the entire room fell silent, as if she had commanded the air itself to stop moving. She looked directly at Brad, her gaze unflinching, and told him that today he would face the truth he had spent years avoiding, that today there would be no hiding, no excuses, no escape. Brad's phone continued its relentless buzzing until he finally answered, pressing it against his ear with a trembling hand, and the voice on the other end belonged to someone high enough in the corporate structure that even Brad had to listen. The conversation was brief, brutal, and loud enough that several people nearby could hear the words "suspended immediately" and "surrender your badge." Brad's face went from pale to ashen, his mouth opening and closing without sound, as he tried to form some kind of defense, some explanation that might save him. The security guard who had watched this unfold, a man named Marcus, who had endured countless humiliations from Brad over the past 3 years, stepped forward with an expression that mixed satisfaction with long-suppressed anger. He extended his hand and told Brad to hand over the badge, his voice steady and professional despite the personal history between them. Brad looked down at the plastic rectangle clipped to his belt, the symbol of authority he had wielded like a weapon, and for a moment it seemed he might refuse. Instead, he unclipped it with fingers that would not stop shaking and placed it in Marcus's palm as if surrendering a piece of his identity. His voice cracked when he tried to regain some semblance of control, pointing at Bianca and shouting that this was organized crime, that she was using intimidation tactics, that someone needed to call the real authorities. Bianca's laugh was quiet, almost gentle, as she corrected him with words that cut deeper than any shout could have. She told him this was not the work of criminals, but the work of justice, and justice did not require weapons or threats, only truth and consequences. Brad spun around, searching the faces in the lobby for anyone who might support him, anyone who might speak in his defense, but found only cold stares and crossed arms. The customers he had served, the employees he had supervised, the people he had believed were beneath him, they all stood united in their silence against him. Then something unexpected happened. Someone began to clap, a slow, deliberate applause that came from the back of the room, and within seconds others joined until the entire bank echoed with the sound of hands coming together in support of Arnaldo. The old man stood there with tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the sudden validation of his dignity. Brad looked at Bianca, sweat beading on his forehead, his voice reduced to a desperate whisper as he begged her to stop this, to make it end. She met his eyes without sympathy and told him she could not stop what he had started, that the momentum of his own actions had brought him to this moment. He dropped to his knees, his designer pants hitting the marble floor, and asked what more they wanted from him. His career was gone, his reputation destroyed. What else could they possibly take? Bianca turned away from Brad and walked slowly toward Arnaldo, her heels clicking softly against the floor as the crowd held its collective breath. She stopped in front of him, her expression gentler now, almost tender, and told him that the decision belonged to him alone, that she would respect whatever choice he made. Arnaldo looked at the man kneeling on the marble, then back at Bianca, his weathered hands still trembling slightly as he spoke. His voice was quiet but clear when he said he did not want revenge or destruction. He just wanted Brad to learn, to truly understand what he had done, nothing more than that. The simplicity of his request hung in the air like a prayer, and several people in the lobby wiped at their eyes. Bianca nodded once, then turned back to Brad with an expression that demanded complete honesty. She told him to apologize, not with empty words designed to save himself, but with genuine remorse that came from somewhere real inside him. Brad remained on his knees, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained, his face streaked with tears he could no longer control. He looked up at Arnaldo, and the words came out broken and raw. He said he was sorry, Mr. Johnson, that he had been cruel and arrogant and filled with a pride that had poisoned everything he touched, and he begged for forgiveness he knew he did not deserve. Outside the bank, the crowd had grown beyond what anyone expected. More than 1,000 people pressing against the glass windows, their phones raised high, capturing every moment of what was unfolding inside. The live stream numbers continued climbing, the comments scrolling so fast they blurred into a waterfall of reactions: shock, anger, support, hope. The bank's corporate office released a statement within the hour, announcing a special compensation program and priority services for elderly customers, promising systemic changes that never would have happened without this moment of public accountability. Bianca extended her hand to Arnaldo, helping him toward the exit as her team created a protective corridor through the watching crowd. She guided him to a black sedan waiting at the curb, opening the door herself and making sure he was settled before sliding in beside him. As the car pulled away from the chaos, Arnaldo turned to her with tears still fresh on his cheeks and asked the question that had been building since she first walked through those doors. He wanted to know why she cared so much about him, why someone like her would risk so much for someone like him. Bianca was quiet for a moment, watching Dallas pass by through the tinted windows before she finally answered. She told him that 2 years ago on a street corner in New Orleans, he had pulled her younger brother from the grip of a massive heart attack, performing CPR until the ambulance arrived, saving a life without even knowing whose it was. Today, she said softly, she had simply returned what he had given her family.